You all for coming to our 3 o'clock walk here on Earth Day. Happy Earth Day. I am Faith Salter. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the executive director of the North County Land Trust. This is not land trust property, but just briefly, a land trust is an organization that works with landowners to protect land. Sometimes it is then open to the public. We take care of the trails and work with towns and municipalities to protect land and have public recreation. So that's a brief little thumbnail about the North County Land Trust. What I want to do today, though, is introduce you to this beautiful little piece of Devens and tell you a little bit about how it came to be. We're going to start here at the Pollinator Garden, and then we are going to walk down to the Riverside Trail that is back here. It's called the Nashua River Trail. We're going to walk that trail, which is an out and back trail, and then we're going to come back up here. I'm going to say a few words about the Pollinator Garden, and then I'm going to encourage you to take advantage of the car-free road walk along the river today, which is really rare, wonderful opportunity to enjoy the river. One thing I wanted to tell you all is, in case you don't know, this is actually part of the Oxbow National Wildlife Refuge. Their sign needs to be repaired. It's not in good shape at the moment. No. But that sign used to say Oxbow National Wildlife Refuge. And we want folks to know that here on the western border of Ayr, we are in fact part of the refuge. So I'm going to do a little storytelling for y'all here. I live in Ayr, and one of the things I want as a resident of Ayr is for the people in Ayr to understand that we are a river town. The Nashua River has a great story of resilience. It's a wonderful story of communities coming together to protect natural resources, and I felt like some of the folks in Ayr might not be connected to the river. We don't have a put-in on this stretch of the river, so you can put a boat in on this part of the river, and there wasn't any public access to the river, and so it started to sort of get my imagination flowing, and I would come down to this parking lot, which is much bigger now thanks to the Devens DPW, and try to think about what we could do. I paddled the river and found a spot that I thought would be a good put-in up the way, and then I brought different folks in. So where we're standing right now, this is the Oxbow National Wildlife Refuge, so it is under the authority of the Federal Wildlife Refuge System. It is on Devens, so it's managed by Devens, which is the state manages this piece, and it is historically Ayr. You know, the historic boundary of Ayr is the Nashua River, and I just feel like a lot of folks in Ayr don't know that, and I wanted the folks in Ayr to feel like they could be connected to the river. And Devens manages this. They have stepped up with their DPW. They took out, there were tons of invasive species in this parking lot. They cleared them all out. They have their DPW keep the trail clear all the way down and back. And a couple of the interesting things about this were, this here is an old, they called it a tank road. I don't, historically speaking, I'm sure a lot of things used it, but it's very compacted. It's nice and level. And so even though we have to be very careful when we go to clear the trail in the spring because of the turtles and things like that, it's a nice level trail that for most folks can walk down pretty easily. So this is, I believe, the wild and scenic part of the river over here, and as we walk down we will see some of the things, hopefully, that love to live on the river. I've seen kingfisher, I've seen different kinds of ducks here, I've seen snakes here, and just a point of interest, there used to be a bridge here across the other side because it is also Devens on the other side and the refuge on the other side. There used to be a bridge here which got taken out, I think, because it was not considered to be safe. But one of the things we talked about standing here one day was whether or not we could someday put a pedestrian bridge in here, because on the other side there's a 4-mile trail called the Esker Loop Trail that you can get to in Shirley, again at a sign that's hard to find because it's a refuge sign, but it's broken and it's on the ground now. And it's beautiful, and it walks on the other side of the river, and it goes further down than this trail does. So we're going to take a little stroll, and I encourage you to listen, smell things, and watch out for the poison ivy because there's quite a bit of it. So here we are at the end of the trail, and one of the things that we've talked about doing, and I've talked to the folks in Devens about this, is they say that the DPW person who helped us one day, he worked Devens while it was still a base. He's been around for a while. He said there was a trail that went down almost to, there's a part of the river that comes up against the airfield where there's really not a lot of room for like a footpath. It's too steep, but he said that there's a trail that goes down almost there and then comes back along the embankment of the airfield. So the airfield is over there. So I have not been able to find them. I have tried from that direction, I've tried from this direction. What I'd love for us to do is be able to have a loop there, again, just to extend the recreational opportunity for folks who live on this side of the river in Ayr, Devens. Because when you get to this part, for Ayr, this is a pretty wild little section, of the town, and Ayr doesn't have that much forest. Yeah, so this section of the river is a little tricky. It's not great for beginner paddlers, and that's why I was trying to find a put-in on the Ayr side that was easy to use for folks who didn't have the ability to get over the guardrail, go down the steep bank, because below the dam the water's pretty rapid, and folks are uncomfortable with that sometimes. So I did find a spot. It's up from where the bridge would have been. It's a nice, like, sort of beachy area. It's shallow, and if the water's slow there's plants growing up underneath, so I know the water's slow. But between the road and that area, it's not very far. But there's all these I would call them like seasonal oxbows. So the earth is just like the river is like changes the landscape between that put-in and the road. And without more study, it would be hard to know how to put one in there. So I had to sort of say I have to let that go for now. But I did think, I know that there's parts of the Concord River where they have put-ins and they have ways to get out there. I know that there's engineering solutions to this if we really wanted to have a put-in Ayr to address that issue of how challenging it is to get in below the ice dam.
And I agree. I've gotten in from there. It is a challenging put-in, and I paddled with someone who was very proficient in the little riffles there when you come down are we never recommend it for beginners. I guess the closest would be to put in at the Hospital Road, at the Billy Ash.
Yeah, but you'd still have to portage around the dam.
Right. Yeah. I mean, if you just were going to do a short paddle.
Yeah, there's a little ducky up there in the water. Devens and the refuge work together on the sign, because remember the point was to help folks recognize that they are river communities, right? And so if you see Ayr showing its surface waters over here leading into the river and everything like that, and helping people recognize it, and then kind of giving people a little bit of what you might see along the water. And I've definitely seen this guy here. And the story of the Nashua River. And this is a really important story for where we live. The story of how Marion Stoddard, she decided to do the work of 1,000 and save that river. And it's a definitive moment in the history of river protection and the Clean Water Act that she did that. The citizen action made all the difference there, and the ability that she had to connect people, particularly before the internet, is something that I find quite dizzying, that she did that on the phone, and by talking to people and not just blasting out emails, but like doing the envelopes and letters and things like that. I tell this story a lot when I am talking to people about the importance of being interested in the environment and the power of individual people to make a difference in their local communities. And on Earth Day, there isn't a better story to tell than this story, because it is us here who have to care about the places that we love and that are in our neighborhoods, and have to speak up and demand that the laws be followed, and get a coalition together, whatever it takes to get it done. So that's why I just wanted to make sure that I presented the sign, because I got to tell you how many phone calls we had to have about
you
this.
did a nice job.
We were going to have a pollinator garden down by the river, but a couple things. One, there's not that much space down there. It's quite shady. And two, we thought if we had it here, the folks who drive by would see it, and it would serve that greater purpose of having folks sort of say, what's going on there? Which is why we wanted to have the sign and everything. And Devens DPW was like, oh, people use this for donuts, and how will we keep it safe? And we were like, well, let's see how we do. And we decided not to put all these big boulders around it. So this is sort of phase 1 layout of the pollinator garden. And ultimately, we wanted to see did it take? Did the plants take? How hard was it to take care of? Could we expand it more into the triangle? And a couple things that I want to mention. One is that, first of all, I love that the sign is covered with bird poo, because what that tells me is the birds are coming here. They're attracted to the seed, right? They're attracted to the garden. And I think that's amazing. The other thing is that there's sort of a movement afoot. Certainly, and maybe I don't know how big it is, because I am the kind of person who would get messages about such a movement, about a homegrown national park, about the importance of creating habitat for pollinators and naturalizing your front garden. But I will say that when I think about climate change, something like this that you might not think about is not only would a pollinator garden like this hold rainwater in place longer than just the grass like this, right? But also, when there's actual plant coverage here, there's a cooling effect. It's not huge, but it is more of a cooling effect than this, right? And sort of there's a little guide I saw one time about sort of just I have been thinking about the heat island in downtown air, and there's this big impermeable surface, and it is the temperature in downtown air is higher on hot days than it is in the surrounding neighborhoods, because there's very little canopy, there's very little greenery there, right? And to the greatest extent possible, even the smallest patch of yard being converted from grass, which is better than pavement, right, to something that's a little bit richer, can contribute to trying to reduce that. And if all of us put some part of our yard into thinking about feeding pollinators and birds, and just leaving leaves and letting it get a little bit rough, just a little part of the yard, you might end up feeding a family of birds. You might end up giving a pollinator a bit of a rest on its journey, or that kind of thing. So I encourage people to think creatively about how something like this could fit in your own property, because there's a lot of protected space, but the biggest portion of land in New England is privately owned. And so that puts the power in our hands to do things with our land. And of course, as the executive director of a land trust, I'm very well aware that what people do with their private land matters, and how they choose to protect it into the future is important. So that is my spiel about the pollinator garden. As Lori was saying, we have to work together to do these things, because if all you do is forest your one town, if all you do is protect the property in your town, that's great. But if this town over here has all this runoff happening, it's going to flow into your town. You've got to think about our interconnectivity community-wise. I think that I'll put away my soapbox for now. Thank you so much for coming on my little walk today. And I'm happy to have you. And any questions, I'll try to answer them, or Lori or Heather could answer them, I suppose. Yeah.